So in the film, I might ask you to tell us a little bit about her as well as some of the other people.
Okay.
Okay.
She was the one that got me involved in NAACP.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, well then we'll start with that. Okay, so
are you ready to go? So just a few things while we're doing this. Ignore the camera and as much as that's possible, and just pretend you're having a conversation with Kathy.
Look at me,
And if there are questions, and I'll remind you if this happens, but if there are questions where you're talking about a person, we're going to try to have you include that person's name. Instead of just saying she, you'll have, say the name that you're talking about. So we want to make sure we're not using Kathy's voice on the film, so it'll be you answering those questions.
I have a terrible voice, but okay. Kids always say, "Oh, your voice is squeaky."
Well, we don't care about
Ignore that.
Just do your normal voice. You're fine. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started, and I'll just kind of cue you with a couple of questions.
All right.
But don't worry about the questions. They're not going to really be on the film. So it'll just be you talking about things. Okay, so let's start out with what was it like for women of color in the late 70s and early 80s? Because you came around that time here, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right, so let's start with that.
Okay.
That's fine.
Just keep going.
She edits everything.
Yeah.
So you can just,
Do I need to?
Yeah, maybe introduce yourself a little bit first. If you want to just kind of introduce yourself and then say sort of, what my experience is in that period of time.
Let's go right ahead, because she edits everything.
Yeah.
Okay. I am Jareldine Mays, and I grew up in the South. So I'm originally from Arkansas, a small town called Rondo, which was population 294. So it was a farming community. And went off to college to Pine Bluff, Arkansas, where I met my husband, Dwayne, and we graduated from college, and then we moved to Texas. And so we were in Nacogdoches, Texas, where there was college, Stephen F. Austin State College in forestry they were known for. And so I taught at Stephen F. Austin for a while. And then my husband's job moved him or relocated him to Lincoln, Nebraska. And so that's how we ended up in Nebraska. And that was back in the late 70s. And we were going to be here for 2 years at the most. And we are still here. And having grown up in the South and always attended church, one of the first things we did, we moved here around Easter time, and so we had a 4-year-old son, and he was had an Easter speech. We always had Easter programs, was involved in Easter programs, so we looked for a church, and we ended up at Mount Zion Baptist Church, and that's where we ended up joining, and we're still there. And at that church, there were many people that helped, because we were in our 20s when we moved here. So there were many people in that church that helped us to grow and to develop. And one of those people was Lenore Letcher, who was a Sunday school teacher at that time, and she was also in the choir. And so Mrs. Letcher was involved in NAACP, and she would always invite us to come to meetings. And it's kind of interesting because now that we're involved in NAACP, it meets the same time each month as it did in the third Thursday, still meeting, and she would tell us that, and we would be like, well, we're busy with our kids. It's because we went from one child to another child, and so we were busy with them and their careers, and we did not get involved in NAACP until after Mrs. Letcher's death. But she was very instrumental in that. She would always tell us, and she was also involved in Nebraskans for Peace, So she was involved in those things that would benefit others.
Okay. Can you think of other women who were active in maybe the NAACP or like that, but also maybe did some women's things?
Okay. One of the an organization in Lincoln, because one of the things we did was we wanted to meet more African American people when we got here, and so we were told go to Malone Center, because Malone Center was the center where mostly African Americans had meetings and gatherings. And so we went there, and there was a group called the Negro Council of Women. And there were many women who were involved in church activities, because church back then was the center for many African American people. That was where we gathered and where we did things. So people leaders grew out of the church. And Mrs. Lucy Nevels was involved in Negro Council of Women, and Mrs. Nevels was also over WICS, Women Center for we call it WICS, and I'm trying to remember what that stands for, but it's group home for young girls. And then Mrs. Nevels got me involved in WICS because she was involved in Negro Council of Women, so you meet people. And this group home was located near Lincoln High, and I taught at Lincoln High, so I would end up teaching many of the girls that was at WICS. And then sometimes the girls would invite me to WICS to come and do presentations or something at WICS, and we ended up carrying some of the girls that was interested in going to church. We would pick them up and take them to church, and then back and forth like that, and take them on outings to the Lead Center or to other activities, to games, to other activities, get them involved in the community. And another person that I met later on in life, I really didn't get involved with Mrs. Leola Bullock until after Mrs. Letcher's death, and then after I got involved in NAACP. And I can remember Mrs. Bullock came to my room at Lincoln High, and she said, I want you to help me with they were getting a group of kids to tour African American colleges. And so she came to my room and she said, we want to meet in your room, and we want you to be involved and help us in that. And that was the first time I got involved with her. And then, of course, after that, she called me and she said, we're going to get this Martin Luther King Day started. And so she got a group of us together and said, okay, this is the theme, and now you guys need to get some young people involved in it. And so then after that, I got involved with her. So she was busy trying to help make connection with women and children, and she was really an advocate for education for children. She wanted them to get the best education that they could, and she wanted others, like the superintendent, the principals, to be aware of it, that she was a voice for young people in the community, as well as for people in prison that she felt that the criminal justice system did not serve them. So she was involved in that. Another person that I didn't get involved with until later, probably until after I met Mrs. Bullock, was Mrs. Shanks. And Mrs. Shank was an advocate. Her voice, she would always tell me, just tell them, just let them know what you're thinking. She would say, I'll write a letter. So she was busy from my knowledge of her in doing that. She would write letters, meet with leaders and say, this is what should be happening. And of course she had a daughter who was an attorney, so she would say, I will ask my daughter and I will find out what should be done or what could be done and how it should be done. And so she was that type of person that, from my experience, that influenced me.
Perfect.
That's great.
That's fantastic. That's great. That's exactly what we were looking for.
Yeah.
Really. Very, very much so.
Do you have any any memories of sort of adjusting to life in Lincoln? What did you notice about Lincoln when you moved to Lincoln?
Different than what you
Different
had
from
been.
Texas.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, really.
Please.
Tell us what it was like to come here in the late 70s and what you experienced in other places in the South versus what it was like here.
When we moved here, which was quite interesting, we didn't know anybody. We didn't know anybody in Nebraska. And so we moved in this edition, and all our neighbors in back of us, in front of us, on side of us, they were all European Americans. And we came from South. And in the South, in the neighborhoods that we had lived in were all African Americans. So that was a great experience. And we moved here near May Day, and we didn't celebrate May Day, and I didn't even know what May Day was. And all these people put all these little things on our front door. I remember these little bags of popcorn and candy, and we were like, what is going on? What are they doing to us? And so our neighbors, and I didn't work for first couple of years after we moved here. And so then my neighbors, I became close friends with all the neighbors around. I was kind of the person that got us all together. So I didn't work. And they explained it to me what was going on, and then I would just laugh about that. I was like, well, why you ring the doorbell and you run away? I was like, what is going on? You putting this stuff at my door and then you run. We didn't know what was going on with that. So that was interesting. But basically, I did not have close relationships with people that was European American. I mean, we came up, when I grew up, African American women were people. We were in our neighborhood, and other groups were in their neighborhoods, and we didn't intermingle. That was just the way it was. You knew it was like that, so you just did it. You just lived that way. And then when I moved here, of course, there was another African American couple that lived on our street. And I saw the children walk past my house to school. And I actually followed them home to find out where they lived so I could meet the family. And that was how I got to know them. But I didn't know, all of the other people that I met was European American. And so I got to be friends with them. And we still stay in contact because, well, their kids, I was the baker. So I would bake cookies. And all their kids would come to my house to eat. And so that was that was the difference for me.
Yeah. When you started teaching, was it easy, difficult? What did you think about working with Lincoln Public Schools?
Probably the most difficult thing about Lincoln Public School was getting a job in Lincoln Public School, getting hired. I had applied when I first my teaching experience was at the college level. And so I'd never taught in a high school or in public school. And so when I was interviewed for a job, I didn't have any experience at that level, but I taught before, so that was the challenging part. But once I got hired, I enjoyed it. I always enjoyed the teaching. And when I left, I said, "Oh, I miss teaching," but I enjoyed teaching. So I didn't have problems teaching. I would talk to anybody, even if they may not feel comfortable talking to me. I talked to them anyway. So I was just that kind of person.
Yeah.
And so I didn't.
Were there very many African American teachers at Lincoln High at that time?
Mrs. Abdullah was there. Carolyn Goodwin was there. And Jake's name? Jake Kirkland was counselor there. Jake was there, and I think Mike Folks was there when I started.
Was Paul Adams still there when
Yes,
you came?
yes.
Yeah.
Carl Adams was there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Arlen
How could I
has such great
forget him?
stories about Colonel Adams. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was, I was hired at the same time as Linda Crump. Linda was hired the same year that I was hired. And actually, what happened, we kind of stayed in our own little areas. But Linda, because Linda and I was hired together, Linda was on second floor, I was on first floor. On the way out every day, Linda would stop by my room and we would kind of debrief how our day went and those kinds of things. But yeah.
That's great. That's great.
And then as the years went by, then I got to know Caroline and Miss Abdullah and everybody else better. But Thomas Christie was there too.
Sure. Yeah, Thomas would have been teaching there then too. What did you hear other African American women say as far as like employment? Because I think in lots of ways education is better in some ways. People who are hired for the same jobs, the same experience, the same educational level, and so they make about the same amount of money, that kind of thing. But what did you hear as far as like employment opportunities for other African American women? Do you remember hearing anything through the NAACP or any of that?
Well, I think, and I can't recall not NAACP, but I just think back then, because I tell my children, when I graduated from college, there were lots of jobs. There were lots of job opportunities. I mean, I was offered jobs, teaching jobs all over, but of course I had to follow my husband, go where he was going. But I think back then, there were jobs, I think, in every area. And of course, this was after the Civil Rights era, the Act, and so things were opening up for African Americans as far as jobs, and people were offering jobs to people. And so I had the first job that I had here was I worked with the state. I worked in child support. And so then I went from child support. We always had a joke because there was some politician, I can't remember now who it was, but he would say, this person would say, people are just going to be able to have one job. They're not going to have to have two jobs. And some of my friends used to tease me because they say, "You're one of those people with two jobs," because I worked half-time for child support and I taught half-time. So that was how I got into the school system. I was working full-time for child support, and I requested to go part-time so I could teach 2 classes at Lincoln High, and I was downtown, and where I worked, and Lincoln High was closed. And so then I went from 2 to 3 classes then to full-time. So
Great. Good. Can you think of anything else?
I had one and now I've lost the question I wanted to ask, of course. No, that's okay. It's just how it goes.
And what does your husband do, Jareldine?
he's retired too, but he worked for the federal government. He was in natural resources. I have to close my eyes because it used to be soil conservation. And they changed the name. So I just remember, what was the name of this place where you worked, Dwayne? So you worked down in the Federal Building.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. So that's interesting. And what brought him to Lincoln from Texas?
He wanted to go to school and get his PhD, and so he applied for a job that they had in the lab in the Federal Building.
Great.
And that was why we were coming here, for him to get his PhD, and then we were gonna move.
Well, you must have liked it pretty well because you stayed a long time.
Yeah.
That's great.
When you think back kind of on your experiences and look to, you've mentioned a little bit what you say to your children, but what would you say to any young women today on kind of what do they need to be aware of or thinking of or working toward? Young women today.
I think they need to know who they are, and I always say that with African American, I always say you need to know who you are, because first of all, if you know who you are, then I think you will be able to search out what it is you want to do and what it is that's going to make you happy. So really think about that and prepare yourself for it. And I was always taught that get an education and use that education to get the job that you want to do, could do, because just because you major in one particular area does not mean that you're going to end up doing a job in that area. Because I worked in child support. I worked the Texas rehabilitation system, so.
Yeah.
And what sort of challenges do you see today that might be different from the experiences you had when you were younger? What sort of challenges do you see for women today?
I think when I was growing up, racism was there. We knew it was there. Nobody tried to hide it. But now I think with the young people that are growing up, it's hidden. And they are, especially with President Obama, I think a lot of the young people think, okay, I'm there, so I don't need to be aware of who I am, and that I'm going to always be African American. So I need to accept that, and I need to know that whatever I do, I'm going to always be African American. And I think sometimes young people struggle with that. And it's just interesting. My 3-year-old granddaughter asked me the other day, she said, Grandma, and I'm like, she's 3. She said, Grandma, are you black? I said, yeah. She said, am I black? And I said, yeah. And I don't know why she asked me that, but that was what she said to me already. Mm-hmm. So we need to let them know that. And of course, when I was growing up, I was always taught, you have to be better. You have to work hard. You cannot go in on, because the playing field is not level. So I always had to do more. I knew that. I accepted that. I did that. But I think young people today don't. You know, I say, do your part and then do a little bit more. I always do additional. So, but I'm not, they're kind of like, I do what everybody else do. But doesn't always work that way.
Very interesting. Well, thank you. That's very insightful. Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to add about anything at all? Anything on your notes that we didn't cover?
I think women in general play a big role in the lives of others because of how society has see us or have us see ourselves, whatever. because we are the caretakers kind of the family, and so we work outside of the home, and then we also work inside of the home. And the new role for me is that now I'm also grandparenting. That although my children were not around our parents because we didn't live in the same state, but now that they're here, we're doing a different role. We're grandparenting, so we're kind of involved in the child rearing. And I know sometimes people say, "Won't you be glad when they leave or whatever?" But I view it as an opportunity because of what's happening these days, what's out there. And when I grew up, I always grew up with family, so you had more than just your parents encouraging you and correcting you. And so I'm kind of thankful and glad that we're having that opportunity for our grandchildren. And we also get to go see our grandson who's in Omaha. We get to feel he's into basketball. He's 15, and I watched him. Oh my goodness, when he was very young, all he could do was hold the rest. So it's kind of amazing now. 6'1". It's like Clinton.
That's funny. 6'1" and 15.
Yeah.
Wow. He's not done growing yet.
Oh, and I'm like, he's taller than his dad. So, but I always tell the story that my husband, there are 11 kids, and I think my husband is probably the shortest one.
Oh.
Everybody, even the girls, they're all taller than me.
Wow.
So, but.
Well, there's height in the family then. Yeah.
So, Brian is, Quentin's dad is taller than his dad, but he's taller than his dad. So.
I think that's interesting what you said, and I think that's so true. That we are very fortunate to have a really active role in our grandsons' lives, particularly the two that live here in Lincoln, and maybe not so much with the Omaha ones, but definitely with the little boys that live here, and they're really close. And something that you said is so important because to me, I'm the one who reaps all the benefits. I'm so lucky to get to have my grandsons around. But I do see that in these days and times, there are so many influences out there for little kids that it is important to have a lot of people around them who are giving them guidance, who have stories to tell them that can give them some perspective other than just the media and some of their friends. And, even some of the kids that I know that are their friends, I don't think are such a great influence, and I think I think you're right. I think that little kids do benefit when they have a whole, like Hillary Clinton said, the village. I think it's really true. I hope that we can make a really positive difference in their lives. So that's a really good point. Yeah. It's really true.
And I enjoy that because when I got off the bus, my mom, growing up on a farm, my mom was there. I didn't come home to a house by myself. But a lot of students today do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they do.
Even my kids. Well, my son, my daughter was not about to stay by herself, so she was the oldest kid in daycare.
Well, she liked people around.
She did.
Well, I know that you made a huge impact at Lincoln High through lots of years of working with students, and kudos to you because you really did make a huge difference at Lincoln High, as did many people that worked at Lincoln High. Arlen has great things to say about so many of the teachers at Lincoln High and the influences that you all had on children, and you don't realize how much that is. But yeah, definitely.
I enjoyed Lincoln High. I always said I love Lincoln High. And I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful that I enjoyed what I did, even to the day I retired. When I went up to tell Dr. Wortman I would be back, but he said, "You said one more year." I said, "I know I did." What I didn't realize at the time, my husband wanted me to retire because he had retired. But I didn't realize that my mom was ill. And so when I retired, I basically left and went to Arkansas and stayed with her until she passed. But so I was glad I could do that, because if I had not, I would have been basket case. I'm an only child. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's
I
true.
would not have been in Lincoln anyway. I would have been like, oh, I can use all my leave because I had to go to Arkansas.
Yeah. Well,
So-
everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
So that worked out really well. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. This
Yeah,
has just
thank
been
you very much.
fantastic. I can't tell you how much we appreciate it. It's just exactly perfect. And and the film's premiere will be September 30th.